Take one.
Keep on your switch, Mike.
You all right, Michael?
A little smoke, but yes, that's not
Brother Love, what exactly is the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church?
The Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church is the redemption of man's soul. It's the liberation of the people.
Could you be more specific? God made a covenant and made a promise with his people that when his people were obedient to his commandments and to the life that he set before them, that he would redeem them from the bondage they found themselves in. And the Coptic Church represents in this generation the true meaning of the Bible, the true meaning of the independence of man.
I mean this question respectfully, but I also want to put it directly. This is not a put-on.
Right.
It's not a joke.
What you're saying?
No, with you. I mean, is it
You see, the Coptic Church is a foundation that's based on the knowledge that God is man. That God is not some spirit up in the sky. That the God that the Bible directs us to, the God that all of the prophets direct us to, is a living God. And that the responsibility that we have is to live a godly life so that we will reflect that we have a knowledge of that God, that that God truly does live in us, not just on Sunday morning, not just when we put a couple of coins in a box someplace, but that we have had a godly effect and a godly influence upon our lives that's made us adhere now to a moral standard that lifts us above the worldly affairs that we see going around all around us every day.
Who is the leader of the Coptic Church?
The leader of the Coptic Church are the elders, the Black brothers. You met Brother Keith and Brother Wally in Jamaica and Brother Sampson. These are the brothers that have been part of this doctrine since the 40s and 50s. And those of us that you see here came upon the church in the late 60s and early 70s in Jamaica.
You came upon it in the late 60s and early 70s.
Right.
When was the church founded?
Well, the church was founded by their grandfather's grandfather. It's been passed down from them. Most of the brothers that are within the church in Jamaica, who in talking you would consider to be brilliant people, can't read or write. In other words, they couldn't read the newspaper or write a letter to you. And yet they have a brilliance and they have an understanding that makes them most able to express themselves and bring forth their understanding of what their problem is and what they show you their solution to be.
Certainly we can agree on that. We know from the Old Testament, among other places, not to mention the New Testament, that literacy is not a requirement for wisdom.
Exactly.
Do you have an affiliation, or is there no affiliation, with the official Ethiopian Coptic Church?
What you're talking about is a religion that is recognized by the society of this world. I understand they have something in Los Angeles and something in New York. No, we are not. We have nothing to do with anything. From the time you hear the name Jesus, we are not affiliated with that. We are talking about the Bible, we're talking about the Christ, but we're not talking about the invisible, imaginary sky god that's been brought forth by the various religions of the world, including the Ethiopian Coptic Church, as you call it. This is the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church.
So that's what I'm trying to get straight. You have no connection
None
with
whatsoever.
what the people in Los Angeles and New York and elsewhere call the official Ethiopian Coptic Church.
None whatsoever.
The name of your church is the Ethiopian Zion Coptic
Right.
Church.
These are the exiled Africans. These are the Africans who were taken into slavery. The whole world has the understanding of the history of slavery, yet in the history books, there's little mention of the fact that God in the Bible had said that would happen to his people. That when they were disobedient, they would have to serve other nations. They would have to have their wealth taken away from them by other nations. And this has happened to the Africans. And the Africans find themselves now scattered all throughout the world. And we came upon this set of Africans, the descendants of the slaves in Jamaica, who told us that they were the seeds of the prophets, that they were the forerunners of those who were to come. They were the forerunners of the generation that is to come now, that is going to abolish politics and what we know of corruption and restore a government that's a godly government upon the earth. And that they and their fathers' fathers have been praying for this day to come, when black and white would truly unite and form a government amongst the people that is based on the commandments of God, based on love and on brotherhood.
Brother Love, I know that you're aware, this will come as no surprise to you, that any number of people watching you, hearing you, will say, that's the biggest bunch of bull feathers I have ever heard.
Right?
That this is either a put on or this man is badly confused. That what he's talking about is not a faith, but is gobbledygook. Now, how do you address yourself to that?
The problem with Christ and with society was that Christ said, "For which of my works do you stone me?" And they said, "No, it's not for your works. It's that thou, being a man, makest thyself God." And that problem has not been solved until this day. For I'm declaring that I am the Son of God. I'm also declaring that you are the Son of God. And that as I have a responsibility to lead a godly life, so do you. And so do all the other people who say this is gobbledygook.
I want to follow up on that. Do you consider yourself Christians, those of you?
I know myself to be a Christian by the life that I live. Christ didn't come to confuse us. He came to show the people that the problem was not with somebody high up in their offices or this and that. The problem was that the people had adopted a sinful nature. The people had followed after the laws of men and the laws of society and had turned their eyes upon the laws of God, turned their back upon the laws of God. Well, we find ourselves in the exact same situation today. A society that is very, very full of ignorance and superstition and misunderstanding concerning God, and full of knowledge about sports, politics, religion, commerce, all the affairs of the world. Well, we're not interested in the affairs of the world. We understand the world to be part of our inheritance. That God gave us the world and gave us dominion over all that you see. That man is the highest creation on the earth. And that man is to rule the earth, but he's not to rule it politically or militarily or economically. He's to rule it according to the standard that God set before his people.
So you do consider yourself Christian?
Of course.
Now, how did you personally get involved in the work of this church? You were raised, I understand, a Roman Catholic.
Right.
You were a
I was
Catholic
raised a
choir
Roman
boy?
Catholic, and I worked, and I had a job, and because of my height, I was found unfit for the military. And then I had my first smoke of ganja, and I considered many of the different things I was doing, and I decided to learn more about the ganja. And I traveled to Jamaica.
By ganja, you mean what other people would call marijuana?
Yes, the herb. The male and female plant known as ganja and marijuana.
I am interested in knowing about this development. You were born and reared in Boston.
Right?
Your family, they were lifelong Catholics, were they?
Right. They still are.
And for how long did you consider yourself a follower of the Roman Catholic faith?
Until I was 17 or 18.
And then what happened?
I couldn't find any justification between what I was hearing in the church and what I was experiencing in my life. The church had no influence over me.
About what year would this have been?
1960.
And then you tried to go into the service?
No, I considered taking ROTC in college, and I went down and asked them about it, and they told me I was too tall anyways.
You're what, 6'3"?
6'7".
6'7". And is it true that you wanted to go to West Point?
For a very short time, a few months, yeah. Until I went there. I wanted to go there for several months, but when I actually went there, I changed my mind.
Well, this was roughly in 1960 and in the early 60s.
Right.
Do you mind telling me when you first smoked ganja?
1968.
Or was that before or after you got involved with the church?
That was before.
And then how did you get involved with the church?
When I traveled to Jamaica, and I had American friends there who introduced me to some brothers from the church, and they invited me to stay there and be their guest. And the longer I was there, the more of their civilization and the more of their understanding of Christianity they shared with me and revealed to me until I reached the understanding and agreed that these people are right. That the doctrine of these black exiles who have only maintained the same life that they see set before them in the scripture, who have only maintained the same moral code that's set forth before you in the scripture, have been patiently waiting for the coming of a generation that would turn things around, that would do away with the old, and bring forth the new being a reflection that all what men have tried to bring about in government, through religion and politics and commerce, from Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Greece, Rome, finally down to Britain and America, that all of these various systems have failed because of one thing. They fail to acknowledge that God is our head, that God gave us law to live by in the beginning, and that all men have tried to establish since that time has been inferior. My understanding of the word law is that law is eternal. Law can't change. The law that says what goes up must come down, that was true 6,000 years ago, and it's true today, and it's going to be true in 6,000 years.
But that's a law of physics.
It's a law. We're talking about the word and concept of law now. Whether it be a law of physics, whether it be a law of geometry, a law of husbandry, whatever a law it is, it can't change. To be considered worthy of being called law.
I see. Let's hold it right there while they change the film.
Tell you what, I have a problem with this smoke. I can't get it to answer. I think, is it?
Yes, there's too much smoke.
Well, I think it's rather low.
I think we're already, we got too much smoke.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think it's a matter of trying to get a bit of a draft.
And if everybody else, if the brothers who are smoking could perhaps go into the next.
Or not smoke, yeah.
Or not
Just that rather low smoke.
Exactly the sort of thing that we do.
What I pray to bring forth is that I am a man of understanding, even though I use her. And to be a man of understanding, I have to understand who you are, what your position is, what your limitations are.
Running? Okay.
Coptic roll to take one.
It's taking a second.
Okay.
Stand as a reason to pause for a second. Let me move on to some other subjects, because I do have a lot of ground I want to cover with you. How many members does the church have?
You can't count. Thousands upon thousands. At the gathering that you people were at in Jamaica, there were thousands inside and thousands outside.
How about the church leadership? How many in the church leadership?
The church leadership is the priesthood of the church, and that's in a handful of men, the same priesthood administration that you people saw in Jamaica.
Well, we're talking about dozens, hundreds?
Yes.
Dozens of people.
Within the priesthood, those who have applied their life fully to the teachings of the Coptic Church.
A lot of people, this is a new subject. What is the relationship to Jamaica and the church? Is the church headquartered in Jamaica?
Jamaica is the land where they carried the Africans into captivity. And within the Africans, they carried the seed of the prophet. So Jamaica is the land now where we first heard the prophet. We, the Americans, first heard the prophecy.
And what does Miami represent to you? Or I should say, what does Star Island represent to you?
Miami represents to us Sin City. Star Island is our embassy, where we live here in America. Our foundation is in Jamaica.
Now, how does one become a member of the church?
One has to give his heart to the teachings and understanding of the church. The foundation of the church basically is this, that God made a promise to his people, that when you keep my commandments, you'll be blessed. When you're disobedient, you'll be cursed. So man having free will, we have freely chosen to keep the commandments. And by so doing, we are able to manifest our blessing.
Is there any initiation necessary for the church?
There's
Baptism?
nothing more than this, that a time will come that you will realize that you cannot live with the burden of sin. And you're going to seek a man who can take that burden away. And the only way that burden can come from you is when you purify yourself.
I'm still a bit...
If you have a stomach ache, you know to go to the doctor. Well, the time's going to come you're going to have a spirit ache. And there's a doctor set for that also.
But when do you say to yourself, as a member of the church in good standing, and indeed one of the leaders of the church, that person is now a member of our church?
We're dealing with consciousness. I know when you've given your heart to me, and I know when you're holding back.
I feel more seed than I want seed.
No.
Remember, God shows you that his word is like a seed, and he plants his seed in man. And where you see God plant his seed, from that seed you see that man influences many men and brings forth many seeds. So you couldn't count in one seed how many seeds there are.
If the church is centered in Jamaica, is that fair to say?
The foundation.
Right. If the church is centered in Jamaica, what are white Americans such as yourselves doing in it?
The world records that one man was crucified for the sins of all, man. That man was a black man. His blessing is for all men. That's why you see black, not only black and white, but China and India, man from every race and nation come together now in one voice, with one praise, with one communion.
You know that there are any number of people who are going to stand up when you say that man was a black man and say Christ was not black.
Well, ask yourself simply this: where did he come from? Did he come from Europe, Asia, or Africa?
They came from North Africa, which generally regarded now as the Middle East.
Which would make him a black man.
Well, I just wanted to drive home.
They crucified an African. They crucified one of the children of the slaves. The seed of the prophet has always risen from amongst the poor, from amongst those who society rejected, from amongst the servants and from amongst the slaves.
Again, any number of people would say, yes, he was a Jew.
Ask him where the handcuffs are.
Do you consider him that he was Jewish?
The Jews of the Bible are the black people, yes. Have you heard of a man called Sam Sharp?
Oh, yes.
Do you know why they hung him?
I'd be interested to know what you say is the reason.
Do you know why they recently called him a national hero in Jamaica?
I could have you tell me in brief.
No. You must be far more qualified than I am as a historian.
But the role here is that I ask the questions and hopefully you'll answer them.
Right.
But tell us the Sam Sharp story.
Basically, Sam Sharp was a black man who spoke the gospel and taught the Bible doctrine to his people, told his people to unite, and to stop being covetous and angry and evil one toward another, but to unite for the same thing.
All right, now back to the question, are you...
Now you tell me what you understand about Sam Sharp.
Well, frankly, what I knew about Sam Sharp was, one, he was a black man.
Right.
That he was hanged.
Right.
For crimes against the state and against the people.
Which were what?
I'm not sure what his crimes were.
They called it crimes of sedition because he had a Bible. He was a minister.
Well, let me return to the issue of what white people are doing and what you yourself say is basically a black man's church. You wouldn't argue with
No,
that.
this is basically man's church.
Not a black man's church.
The foundation of the church is black. The name of the church is the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church.
Is that universal?
Yeah, the blessing is universal. God never told any one man that he was superior or inferior to any other man. It's only the things people do that make them inferior.
And there's not a ritual required for membership in the church.
There's nothing that you would recall.
It's not a ritual.
It's not a ritual. Well, I know what you mean when you say ritual, and the answer is no. This is a heart dedication. In other words, you're hearing the truth, and it's up for you to recognize it.
All right, let's address ourselves to the truth. Is smoking marijuana required of church members?
Using ganja is the blessing of God. Ganja is a herb. It's a plant. God created it male and female. It is not a drug. It's a natural blessing that's part of our harvest. When I say our, I'm talking about the millions of people who use ganja every day in every country and every part of the world.
Now back to the question. If one is a member of the church, is one required to smoke ganja?
Everyone who's reached the consciousness to be part of this church has also, within their consciousness, realized that they should smoke ganja. Yes, there are none who do not.
Now, you said you had a lot to say to people and that you wanted to get a message across to people. Is the basic message you should smoke ganja?
The basic message is you should stop your sin. The basic message is that the rights that everyone is agitating for, the rights that the politicians claim they're talking about, can only be found in one key, and that's in the keeping of the commandments. When you and I are neighbors, and I have the security that you are a man who keeps the commandments of God, then I know you're not going to rob me, you're not going to murder me, you're not going to covet me. So that's the only security that people can have, is to stop their sinful ways, stop becoming homosexuals when they know what the scripture says about homosexuality, they know what wisdom shows you about destroying your own seed of life. They should stop their abortion, they should stop their birth control, they should stop their oral sex, their hand sex, and any way that they're destroying their own life and their own seed of life. They should stop those things immediately. And they should have known to be smoking ganja from a long time. For how is it that I know to?
The reason for asking this, and I want to come back to it because it's very important if anyone is to understand what it is you're about and what the church is about, is whether you consider the smoking of what you call ganja, other people call marijuana. It's illegal. That is, it's against the law of the United States to do that. As a matter of fact, it's against the law of Jamaica to do that.
It is not against the law of God to partake of herbs.
And that's exactly where this court case is going to turn, isn't it?
Right, well, let's start from the beginning. Page 1 of the Bible, Genesis book 1, verse 29. Behold, I have given you every green herb bearing seed, which is upon all the
Genesis might very well have been speaking of parsley.
No, it said, I have given you every green herb, to exclude any doubt, such as you're trying to interject. There's no doubt. Free to use it or free not to use it as you choose, but in no way should you be influenced other than in your relationship with God, because God put it here.
Let's talk about the
Your
court.
thoughts about marijuana should in no way be affected by police or drug enforcement agents or narcotics agents
Do you consider it
or anybody involved in the scheme of crime or criminology. They have nothing to do with my life whatsoever.
Sorry for that interruption. Do you consider it a drug?
I consciously, fully, with my eyes wide open, know that it is a plant, it is a male and female herb, it is a gift of God. I also know that a drug comes from laboratories. A drug is a powder or a liquid solution and compound and chemical. This is not a drug. This is a living seed. I can take a seed, I can put this fire out, take a seed out of this same spliff right here, plant it out in the backyard, and you see a tree of life spring forth. So I'm partaking of a living sacrifice.
Living
The
shepherd.
scripture shows you that man would partake of a sweet-smelling incense, of a holy offering made unto our Lord by fire. Well, that fire isn't in the fireplace. This is an offering that I partake of within my own temple to redeem my own self.
How did you get into court?
We were subpoenaed by the local Dade County State Attorney's Office because they couldn't take the pressure they were getting from the public who were seeing us on television freely smoking marijuana practically every day.
Take me from the beginning and tell me about that.
Sorry, Dan, mind your arm. Can you just drop your left arm a second?
Let
Thank you. I'm out of film.
We'll just pause for a second.
That's good.
Picking up on a word you used, you spoke of being moral, the necessity of being moral, and morality. What is moral about letting an 11 or 12-year-old child smoke marijuana?
The morality of the ganja man's life, the morality of the man who lives after the scriptures, doesn't begin at any particular age. A child is naturally going to follow in his father's footsteps. A child has the limitations and the tolerance of a child, and he's treated as such.
But that's one of the things that upset your neighbors so, seeing children here smoke marijuana.
You see, the same neighbors who claim to be upset by that, through they don't understand that, would not be upset by a gay rights demonstration in Miami. They would not be upset if they really heard what the politicians have been going on with for hundreds of years. That is superstition. We understand it as that, and I would assume you understand it as that also.
And is that
Remember
Sorry.
that we're talking about a covenant that God makes with man. We're talking about an adoption covenant. And we have adopted this civilization and this culture.
Now, is that the way you got into court? Was it your neighbors who originally got the police on you?
Right? Through complaining about hearing the chanting and the church music, and even saying the one neighbor next door one time gave a TV interview where he said that he could get stoned standing in his driveway, and through that began the foundation of the court case.
And then what happened? Your neighbors complained, the police came.
No, in the court, the police came many other times, but they never arrested anybody. The court case was became a First Amendment issue when they realized that what they thought was a crime is our sacrament, is our offering that we make unto God every day.
The smoking
And
of
when they came upon us and saw the marijuana, we said, yes, this is ours. Of course it's ours. This is our herb, this is our sacrament. And when we reached into court, the dispute became whether or not man has a right to partake of this herb. And that has become the question that's before the Supreme Court now. And the burden now, they say, rests upon the state because we've established we're a church, we are sincere, and this is an essential portion of our spiritual doctrine. So we're waiting to see what their next move is.
And if you lose in the Florida State Supreme Court?
God,
This is a question where we know we can't lose. And this is a matter for the heads, the highest ones they have in the land. The highest doctors, the highest lawmakers, the highest judges have to assemble themselves together now and solve this question, this touch question of marijuana. Who made it and who is it for?
Now, if the court rules against you, you are in effect out of business or out of favor.
No, but the court, I have no business with the court. The court can't put me in business, the court can't put me out of business. My life has not changed one bit from before the court, during the court, nor after the court. The entire court proceeding is for them to gain some understanding.
And question, why spend so much time, money, and effort on the court case?
We're defending our rights, and not only our rights, but the rights of millions of people. The time has come that the suffering must stop. As we talked before, while we're sitting here in relative comfort discussing marijuana smoking, there are thousands of people in jail at this moment. For what? Marijuana smoking. And that's a great injustice against humanity, whether it occurs in America, Jamaica, Cuba, China, wherever it occurs in the world. That is criminal injustice upon humanity. That is one man seeing something, and through you accepting a gift of God, you get thrown in jail. You get beaten, you get kicked, you get robbed. That's not right. So although we're relatively comfortable right now, we're agitating for a much bigger solution than just you and I having a little conversation right here.
You'd like to see the smoking of marijuana legalized everywhere in this country?
Not, from the time you say legalized, that to me sounds like whiskey. And whiskey's something you can buy from the government, but if you make your own, they'll put you in jail. So that does not apply to marijuana. Marijuana, ganja, is free. We're not fighting for the freedom or the legalization. We're declaring that it is and always has been free.
And what you're trying...
The source of marijuana is not money. The source of marijuana is a seed, and seeds come from God.
But what you'd like to have then, let me put it another way, is have the courts of this country agree that marijuana, ganja, is free, is the law of God, and every person is free to smoke it.
Exactly.
Now, do you feel the same way about cocaine, heroin?
Not one bit. You've just transmitted from the realms of natural. We should have talked from the time you stopped talking about marijuana, you should have said, how about celery or apples? Because they're all part of the same creation. But you've transmitted now from living things to dead things, to dead white powders.
But I know you're aware so many people do that. They lump marijuana, cocaine, heroin all together. That's drug traffic. That's dope.
Have you ever seen marijuana?
Yes, of course.
Does that look like dope to you?
Well, in its natural form, of course, it's a plant.
Exactly. And that's what this is. It's a natural herb and a natural communion that we share with one another, as do millions of other people who have not yet realized that when the prophecy talked about a generation that would come, a royal priesthood and a holy generation of people who would set their thoughts not on the affairs of the world, but upon the affairs of Zion, upon the affairs of God, and that our generation is in that respect totally different than our parents. We're much more divine and much more godly and much more seeking after the spiritual matters, and forget the political matters, the military matters, the economic matters. We've solved many of our own problems, and we're free to seek after the spiritual truths and build our foundation upon these spiritual truths. So, as I said before, we're waiting for the day when all of the high kings and princes of the earth will gather and talk to the ganja man so that we can stop this suffering now, set the people free now, and make these people know that they have a head.
Speaking of suffering, any number of people in Miami, and not all of them in law enforcement, said to me before I came to do this interview, and these are direct quotes, Mr. Rather, what you're going to be dealing with on Star Island is the same kind of thing that Jim Jones had done in People's Temple in Guyana. Now, let's talk about that. Let's address that directly. This is not the first time you've heard that accusation, that
Ez a very
suspicion.
rapákat.
That's hypocrisy.
How so?
Ezzel nála integrity.
The nature of you being here is that a set of people have declared to you the existence of a church and the existence of a doctrine that will have an uplifting effect upon your moral. Now, does that sound like Jonestown to you? You're talking about some people now who have not unconsciously allowed ourselves to come into the public light, to get involved in court cases, to get involved with publishing a newspaper, to get involved in letting people hear what we say, so that when the leaders see the reaction amongst the people, they will know that the power amongst the people is what is going to set the ganja man free. So our fight is not an unconscious fight. Our existence is not an unconscious, hypocritical existence. And I don't know what anyone could tell you to convince you that we are in the same category as Jonestown.
Well, let me make clear that I'm not convinced of anything. But I want to give you an opportunity to address that straightforwardly. Let me put it another way. Are there any similarities between yourself and Jim Jones?
I have no knowledge of Jim Jones except what I read in the paper, and I read in the Bible that the wages of sin is death. And I understand he ran a homosexual, perverted, wife-swapping, adulterous, lecherous camp somewhere in the jungle, and that many of the people were murdered and some committed suicide, and I'm not the least bit surprised.
And do you think that not myself, if someone takes an objective look at what you're doing, how you're doing at your church, that they will be absolutely convinced that there are no similarities?
Any time that you feel the Coptic vibration in your heart, you decide in yourself whether it's true or whether it's false. We could be talking about much more important matters.
Do you get this argument very often here?
I got it from what I consider the inferior thinking Miami media. The reactionary, looking to cause some kind of an explosion. Wouldn't it be nice if we had that kind of excitement in Miami local media?
What were your relations with the media before the Jim Jones tragedy?
As I said before, we allowed ourselves to become part of their existence, to let them come into our house and talk to us. And our relationship to them was one of continual disappointment, that their vision was only limited to police activity, tax activity. They never wanted to take the time to understand the moral argument of why it is a man would become part of this church.
My point was, did their attitude change? Did the attitude of the media change toward you after Jonestown?
We became what you call hot news in their sight for a short time, until the judge in Miami, in the same court case, sent 2 assistant state attorneys from Miami to St. Thomas, Jamaica, to take depositions of elders in the church in Jamaica to determine that exact question. They came back, and the final ruling of the judge, after those depositions were taken in Jamaica, after talking to several of us in his court for several days, his ruling was, the exact words are, the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church represents a religion within the meaning of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution.
And that's what's being taken to the Florida Supreme Court.
That is the reason that we were able to go to the Florida Supreme Court.
Now,
That's been stipulated to by the police and by the state attorney.
no, I checked that it has.
Jövőleg nem ordinál.
In some cases grudgingly, but nonetheless, that is the
Ez
case.
a surprise.
That's all meaning for the Miami meeting.
Coptic roll 4, take 1.
I want to move on to something else, but I want to make sure you have an opportunity to address that fully. I gather that, I don't gather you say, you don't really consider that even a fair question at this point.
I don't even consider it reasonable. I don't consider it has any integrity, or it would show that you had any respect for the multitude of people who you know have been closely investigating us for a long time and have been forced to make public statements, such as the judge, such as the Florida Supreme Court, who has already ruled that we have shown cause why we should be granted our exemption. And the local state attorney's office has been demanded to show why it is we should not get that relief.
Well, the record does show that the judge, after investigating after hearing all the evidence, said that you did represent a church.
Within the meaning of the First Amendment
Within the
of the
meaning of
United
the
States
First Amendment.
Constitution. Right.
Exactly. Now, let's move on.
Good.
To something else. Over the last year, and with all the legal wrangles you've had, could you give me some round figure of what that has cost you?
We should move on again. We're not here. The money has the least meaning of all in our life. Our foundation, our wealth, our fame, our history has nothing to do with money.
Has nothing to do with money.
No, money is a tool, a worldly tool.
Where does the money come from?
Well,
Make it.
your people in government make it. Mr. Carter makes it. Fort Knox.
No, that I understand, but you know the thrust of the question. That it takes money to go from here to Jamaica, it takes money to get from Jamaica back here.
You see, the thinking of the world today is based on interest. A man will have $1,000, he'll put it in the bank, and at the end of the year, he'll have $1,060. Well, we don't think that way. We think about multiplication, we think about increase, we think about blessing. We think about the fact that if you have 20 goats, that by the end of the year, you're going to have 40 goats. And you also would have something to eat all during that year. So we deal with the direct blessing from God. What we put our hand to naturally increases. If people have seen our foundation in Jamaica, you shouldn't have to ask where whatever we have comes from.
Well, we have taken a look at the foundation in Jamaica, and one thing is the trucking business in Jamaica. Is it fair to say that that's at the core of your...
No, our foundation is the creation. That's just a service thing. That's the lightest part of our existence.
It's the lightest part of your existence.
Our existence is the moral life that we live, the fight that we have every day. And that fight is not against trucks, and is not against money or for money. That fight is against sin. That the people will become conscious of what they're doing to themselves every day. That by following who they're following, they're on a ship that's about to go upon the rocks. And that those same people are God's people. So we want the people to become conscious of the covenant that God made with them, so that when they go upon that journey that's destined to go upon the rocks, they will know the truth. They can't say they didn't hear the truth. And that's what we're here for.
But that doesn't address itself to the question. Every church has to have, among other things, a financial base.
How many churches did God say he established?
How many churches did God say that he established?
Right.
Well, I'm not sure that I know how many churches God says he established. I would think the answer you're looking for is one.
Well, the answer is that God said, upon this rock, I will build my church. So that's what we are declaring to you.
All right. But again, even one church, one rock, you've got to, money changes hands. I don't want to dwell upon money, but it's one of the things, quite frankly, that I think that it prevents your message from getting across. A lot of people say, well, where is the money for this thing?
Do you read in the scripture about the abominable, detestable idol that has eyes that can't see, and ears that can't hear, and feet that can't walk, and hands that can't handle? Of course. That's the image. The worship of that is the root of all evil. That is a piece of paper. The worship of that, the worship of your society, or you're being forced to dwell upon that, is the root of all evil.
That may be, but now back to the question. Some money changes hands somewhere. When the police come and they find $90,000, which they confiscated, did they not?
Everything that the Coptic Church has comes from the Coptic people. Our gospel isn't a burden on anyone else. Did any of the people that you talked to say they ever gave us anything?
I'm not sure I know what people you're talking about now.
The federal people, the law people,
Oh,
the
no.
media people,
No.
the judicial people.
No,
Well, then that means what we have, we provided ourselves
exactly.
with our own hands.
Right now,
We brought forth that blessing.
so there are contributions to the church.
There are a multitude of contributions.
And the trucking business is not a money-making enterprise per se.
Well, it wasn't, that's not the intent. That's not the foundation of anything you see under the umbrella of the Coptic Church. It's to show that by man working together, by man overcoming greed and covetousness, and working for the mutual good, that man together can accomplish anything. But the blessing everybody's looking for is not outside of man. It's in man. But you can't have the blessing as when you're ignorant of the laws and disrespectful to the commandments. Because everyone knows you're not supposed to lie, and look at how much lies are told every day. I read in the newspaper one time, they said the average American tells lies 200 times every day, I think. So the people know the laws of God, but they don't respect them. They don't pattern their lives after them.
Well, I could possibly believe all of that.
Well, it's not a matter of belief.
Yeah.
I want you to know that.
What is the matter of that?
I want you either to convince me that what I just said was wrong, or acknowledge that you know it, because it's too late for belief. You can believe anything you want. Now we're dealing with knowledge. We, the ganja people, are dealing with knowledge. Because remember, some people will believe that it's all right to throw you in jail for ganja, but that's not based on knowledge. That's based on hypocrisy. So I don't want to hear what you believe. I want to hear that you know that.
I see your point, that there's a difference between belief and knowledge.
Right.
Now, what I know is that there's a trucking business in Jamaica. What I don't know is where the trucking business fits into the church.
Absolutely, that could add it back.
What could that lead you to? We're talking about a moral revival to turn all of the people, black and white and yellow, toward God. Now, do you really want to stop talking about that and start talking about trucks?
For the moment, yes.
Well, you're wasting our precious, very precious time. You came before and you said, what is it we want to say to the people? What I want to say to the people has nothing to do with trucks.
But
Doesn't your own wisdom, don't you see trucks on the highway all over the place?
well, of course, but I don't often see trucks with a church name on the side. And it was not my intention to make a big thing of this, but I'm a bit puzzled as to why there's no explanation of where the trucking business
I
fits
can
into
do
it.
that to the church for that stuff.
Isn't it right for the church that the Bible shows us to be independent? The politicians tell us to be self-reliant. Isn't it right for us to know that when we have a farm that we're going to have somebody truck it from this point to that point, that we can have our own trucks to do that?
Well, now that makes some sense to me.
Well, I would think that your eyes would show you that.
That the trucks are there among...
I want you to consider that you're talking to a spiritual person who has solved the physical problems. And we should be talking about the matters that could uplift everyone who's hearing us right now. We should talk about something that could free thousands of people who are unlawfully in jail right now. It's a much more important argument than trucks.
Well, I didn't mean to be argumentative
No,
about trucks.
I don't mean to be argumentative also, but this is a precious short time that we have.
If you're going to get someone to come to the knowledge that you would like them to come to, accept the knowledge you would like to have them accept, then I suspect you've already found this. But what I find is I say to someone, they say, well, they don't get past the trucks. They say, well, they use the trucks as part of their money-making operation. I say, what money-making operation? They say, oh, to talk to them about. They make a lot of money off trucks, and trucks is what they're about. I'm saying, let me put it directly. Are trucks what you're about?
The first question you asked was, what is the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church? And I told you that that represents the redemption of man's soul. That's what we are about. We have a chant we chant every day, and it says, cease from sin and look within thee, trust in God, and do the right. That you, as a conscious person, no matter what you've attained to in society, no matter what your educational background, that you as a person that should have reached the consciousness that God made you should understand your relationship with God. And that if you follow after politics, if you follow after churches that walk around begging from the people and not being shepherds but being wolves, if you follow after commercial activity, you'll never reestablish the covenant. There can't be any dispute that man fell from his divine position with God. Now the question is how to restore that blessing to mankind. Because within that blessing, you don't find war. You don't find political divisions. You don't find famine and plague and destruction. You find bounty and increase that God promised us. So you, as a conscious spiritual man, should know your relationship with God. More than you know what you have in the bank. More than you know whether you're going to have a job with this company next week. You should know your relationship with your Creator to be a conscious man on the earth. To be relied upon as someone who could help uplift a decision-making process.
How do you feel about the Internal Revenue Service case?
They're a bunch of robbers and thieves and whores.
The Internal Revenue Service?
Robbers, thieves, and whores.
On what evidence?
They have no integrity, they have no foundation, they are the most covetous set of individuals, they do not produce anything, they all have little soft, pink, fleshy little hands, they sit in offices all day long trying to devise different ways to rob the people.
On what evidence do you base that?
Down.
You said the same thing.
We were talking, perhaps fair to say, I had raised the Internal Revenue Service.
Right.
I know that it's a rather complicated case, but in brief, what are your particular problems with the Internal Revenue Service?
The Internal Revenue Service is socialism. The Internal Revenue Service represents a set of people who do no work, who produce nothing of any value. The most you ever get from the IRS is something in your mailbox. You never get anything you can eat or anything you can wear or anything of value. They are a plague upon the people. The reason why all of the people hate the tax man is because he's an evil. You know that God has a government. That God talked to his government of apostles and prophets and priests and kings. Well, Satan has his government too. Now you decide whether the tax man is part of God's government or part of Caesar's government. Part of the heavenly government or part of the earthly government who by their earthly nature oppose the heavenly government.
What does the Internal Revenue Service have of yours?
Absolutely nothing.
Well, I was under the impression that they had the $90,000.
Oh, that's in suspension.
They don't have that.
No, they don't have that. They were told by a judge to return it immediately.
And did they?
No, they disobeyed the judge's order and said that their lien was higher than the judge.
Now, the
Which is
fact,
why they're going to higher court also.
now, the fact situation on that was the police came here, raided one night, didn't find the large quantities of ganja that they thought they'd find, but did find $90,000 and took the money.
Robbed the money. Right. They had a search warrant that said marijuana. They didn't find any marijuana. They found some expense money, and they directly robbed it.
They took it with them.
Yeah.
Then the Internal Revenue Service took
And
it.
then we went to court, and we explained to the judge where the money came from, whose it was, and the judge said, I understand. And the judge's order said twice in the judge's order, return this money to the Coptic Church immediately.
And you still don't have it back?
We still don't have it back. It's been over a year.
Now, the Internal Revenue Service, the records indicate that they also took, was it 13 tons and then 15 tons?
The Internal Revenue Service has no knowledge of anything not like that. They don't deal with anything like that. What you have to understand about the Internal Revenue Service is, you know what an octopus looks like? It's got one head and many different arms. Well, Satan's government has many different arms. You've got the military arm and the political arm, and you've got the tax man's arm. You can't understand the tax man by talking about dollars and cents. You have to understand the tax man by talking about his foundation. And his foundation is basically this, that he sits down in his office and devises different ways to rob the people.
The Internal
To
Revenue
give you,
Service,
to take from you and give you nothing in return.
Internal Revenue Service has made the argument that because it's known that you were transporting 13 tons on one occasion,
Who knows
15
that?
tons on
I
another
didn't take it
occasion.
that
Well, they say that they know it. The Internal Revenue Service says they know
I
it.
didn't take it that
Did
far.
they take it, you just of yourself said they came here and didn't find any marijuana.
Well, that was the police on one raid, was my understanding.
Exactly, on every rate.
They've never found
Listen,
any
listen,
marijuana.
understand something, and this should be a very plain distinction in your mind. From America to Jamaica to all over the world, no Coptic has ever been charged for selling or smuggling or transporting any marijuana. There's only been one charge, using and possessing marijuana.
All right, now would you
And no matter
repeat that?
where that conflict comes about, we always have the exact same argument, that this is a divine act. It's not a commercial act, it's not a criminal act, it's not a social act. It can't be legislated whether it's right or wrong. It's man accepting a gift from God.
Right. Now-
This is as natural as if I eat an orange.
This is exactly where the argument turns in many people's minds. One, the Internal Revenue Service assures me
Who is
that
it?
you're engaged in a commercial transaction of ganja.
Who is the IRS? Well, who does he say told him that?
Well,
I certainly didn't.
But regardless of who said what to whom, what I'm asking you, is that true?
That's folly, that's imagination.
Is it false?
That's why they, of all you see with their big power, they can't take anything of ours whatsoever. And we've asked them for our day in court, and they repeatedly withdraw, and the last time I talked to them, they said that we probably couldn't get to go to court till September of 1980. We want to face them and expose their robbery and their hypocrisy.
Now, you said earlier...
Some people were charged with different things. Those charges were all dismissed.
No, I checked the record, and those charges were dismissed.
Right.
And now, you said...
And yet, so why hasn't the tax man dismissed his argument? Because he's a covetous, greedy thief.
Now, you said...
Have you ever seen a thief who enjoyed being exposed?
Of course not.
Well, all right, that's what's happening with the tax man and the Coptics. The thief does not enjoy being exposed.
Now, you said earlier that not a single member of your church has ever been convicted of smuggling.
Charged, not convicted, charged.
Never been charged.
No.
Never been successfully charged
It's
with
only
smuggling
for
anything.
possession. And we always declare the same thing. God gave us this.
Actual smuggling.
Now, why is it that
When you talk about smuggling, what do you mean by smuggling?
well, my definition would be what is legal and what is illegal by the laws of the United States.
Right.
When I say smuggling, and when I say to you, people, including those in Internal Revenue Service and in law enforcement, say, Mr. Rather, what you have to understand is this organization is involved in large-scale marijuana smuggling. Smuggling, by that definition, is something that's illegal by the laws of the United States. Engaged in marijuana traffic for profit, I would consider to be smuggling.
When you go into the court, do you swear by the laws of the United States, or do you swear by the Bible?
The court requires you to swear on the Bible.
So that would show you that even their courts show you that there is a law of God. And that same Bible shows you that there will be laws of men, that laws that society impose upon the people. When they asked Christ about tax, Christ said, "Bring me a penny." And they brought him a penny. And he said, "Whose superscription, whose image is that on the penny?" And they said, "That's Caesar's." He said, "All right, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto God what is God's." That's the problem today. The people are all very mindful to pay their debt and their homage to Caesar, but they're very neglectful to pay their honor and their homage to God. That's the conflict between us and the IRS. We declare that our life is a free expression of the blessing of God.
I'm sure you can see the Internal Revenue Service's point in the sense that if...
Can I give you a perfect example?
Sure.
I was in Jamaica in August, and I was driving down the road. A vehicle came up, and a tax man came up. And the tax man had a piece of paper, and he said that he understood that when we first acquired this property, it was desolate. Nothing planted there. It wasn't even used for pasture. It was just woodland. And now there's cultivation there. Now there's irrigation there. Now there are people living there. Children are being born there. There's calves and goats and chickens there. Therefore, we say, you owe us something. They didn't lift their finger to build any of that.
Is this the Jamaican tax man?
It's the same tax man. It's the same beast. It's the same octopus reaching out and keeping the people in bondage.
Have they harassed you, the Jamaican tax people?
This is the exact same way. They charged one of the church elders one time for over $1 million in tax. And he went to the court and he said, not 1 cent. And the final argument by the judge was to admonish and discharge not 1 cent. You can't tax a church, you know.
And so you won that case?
Yes. As we will, of course, win this case.
I want to get back to...
Now, I'm sure you're aware of the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Yes.
What it guarantees. That it guarantees that man has a right to a freedom of religion within the reasonable understanding that my religion is not a threat to you or to my neighbor or to my neighbor. We qualify there. Now, we did not invent the Coptic Church to qualify there. We adopted the Coptic Church, and when we were accused, we defended ourselves. And within our defense, we were found to qualify in what the entire world recognizes as a bona fide, sincere Christian faith.
Now that's a fact, and that's a fact of record.
That's a fact of court record by a judge.
Now, is it a fact that you are not in the trucking business in Jamaica to make a profit?
We're in the
To set
trucking-
up that to support yourself.
Everything you see us do is to support ourselves. Anything that money is not something, the profit you're talking about, the increase you're talking about isn't something you put down in the corner. When you have something, you make it generate something else.
So the answer is
We are a
no.
living spirit. That is something that is a necessity of life. We are not the first person to have trucks, neither are we going to be the last. That's to fulfill a necessity of life.
It is not a fact that you're in the business of smuggling marijuana into the United States.
I have no knowledge of even what you're thinking about, much less what you're talking about.
Well, but the Internal Revenue Service claims that you are in the business of smuggling marijuana.
Where you get that truck?
And as I asked you before, and you still haven't answered me, who told him that? I didn't.
Their claim, and I'm not here to defend the Internal Revenue Service. I have all people not to defend the Internal Revenue Service. Their claim is, and this is where their argument goes.
Wait, let's take a shortcut. Didn't you just say that those charges you're about to mention were dropped?
No, I believe you said that.
And you agreed?
Yes, the record shows that the charges were dropped.
So what's the dispute?
But the Internal Revenue Service continues to.
We are the only church in the United States of America that has gone to court and been found not guilty, has been found that our life of living under microscopic examination is qualified in their highest esteem, which is to be saying we are within their First Amendment. Now, when the day comes that the Catholic Church is investigated like that, anyhow they discover a lot of adultery in the Catholic Church, they won't qualify. They'll say, no, you're hypocrites. If there's adultery in the Catholic Church, if there's homosexuality in the people who call themselves Jews, they're not going to be found worthy.
What turned you off of the Roman Catholic Church?
Reality. I was told in the Roman Catholic Church that I could not meet God until I was dead. The scripture showed me that man is the Son of God.
I think we're about there. I think this next row will be it. What row is it?